Evelyn had just tied her apron around her waist and was about to chop some vegetables for dinner when her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. Picking it up, she saw Chloe's name flash across the screen. With a sigh, she answered, "Hey Chloe, what's up?" "Hey Evelyn, did you remember the shift changes for tonight?" Chloe's voice was gentle, knowing this might throw off Evelyn's plans. Evelyn's heart sank as she leaned against the counter, the forgotten memo about the shift changes hitting her like a wave. "Oh, Chloe, I completely spaced it out. Thank you so much for reminding me." "Don't worry, I've got your back, girl," Chloe reassured her with a laugh. Evelyn managed a small smile, grateful for such a thoughtful colleague. "I guess it's takeout night for us then," she said, looking over at her daughter who was drawing at the kitchen table. Half an hour later, rain was lashing against the windows, blurring the world outside into a grey smear. Evelyn hastily zipped up her jacket, her mind racing as she received a message from Chloe who made sure she knew that the times of start of her shift had also changed. That was a real curveball for her. She glanced at Charlotte, her 5-year-old daughter, who was happily colouring at the table, oblivious to the sudden change in plans. "Sweetie, I need to head to Mrs. White's, but I'll be back before you know it," Evelyn assured her, though her heart twisted at the thought of leaving her unexpectedly. She grabbed a flashlight as the storm seemed to threaten a power outage and ran out of their small trailer toward Mrs. White's house, nearby. Water soaked through her shoes, chilling her feet as she sprinted. Upon reaching the cosy house, she knocked hastily. Mrs. White opened the door with her usual warm smile, though her eyes quickly registered concern at Evelyn's soaked appearance. "Is everything okay, kiddo? Where's your umbrella?" Mrs. White asked, ushering her inside. "Oh, I don't really have one, Mrs. White. Chloe just called. She said I had a shift tonight. Could I leave Charlotte with you tonight?" Evelyn asked, brushing wet strands of hair from her face. Mrs. White's cheerful expression faltered as she glanced towards a suitcase by the door. Her voice was apologetic as she responded, "I'm sorry, Evelyn, but I am leaving soon. I have to stay with my cousin. She's not well. I have to drive 12 hours to get there, and I don't know how long I'll be gone." "Oh, I see. Okay," Evelyn replied, her voice hollow. Panic began to creep in as she considered her limited options. Mrs. White reached out, touching Evelyn's shoulder gently. "I wish I could help, Evelyn. I would offer to take Charlotte with me, but I'm afraid it's going to be stressful being away from you, and I don't even know when I'm going to be back." "I'm so sorry, kiddo," she said sincerely. No, of course, thank you so much, Mrs. White. You've done a lot. You always come to help. I'll figure something out. Are you all right?" Evelyn's voice was tinged with concern and gratitude. "I'm fine, kiddo, thanks for asking," Mrs. White replied with a gentle smile, though her eyes hinted at the worry for her own family matters. With a final grateful hug, Evelyn turned away, feeling the sting of the chilly rain against her face. As she walked, her thoughts raced with uncertainty. It had never crossed her mind that one day Mrs. White would have other things to do than watch after Charlotte. The realization left her feeling unexpectedly adrift. Reaching her trailer, Evelyn wiped her feet and shook off her coat, trying to shed the cold that had settled into her bones. Inside, the trailer was warm, a stark contrast to the bleakness outside. Charlotte looked up from her colouring books, her face lighting up at the sight of her mother. As the clock on the wall ticked louder in Evelyn's ears, her anxiety grew. She sat at the small kitchen table, her phone clutched in her hand, her mind racing through her list of contacts for someone, anyone, who could take Charlotte for the evening. Each name brought with it the realization of just how small her support network really was. Finally, in desperation, Evelyn dialed Jennifer's number, her last hope. She listened to the long, agonizing rings until Jennifer finally answered, her voice nearly drowned out by the sound of children screaming and playing in the background. "Jen, hey, it's Evelyn. I'm so sorry to bother you, but I'm really in a bind," Evelyn started, her voice tight with stress. She quickly explained her unexpected shift and the sudden need for someone to watch Charlotte. Jennifer's sigh was audible over the chaos of her own household. "Evelyn, I'm swamped here as it is," she said, her tone bordering on frustration. "You can bring her over, but I've got my hands full. I can't promise I'll be able to give her much attention." Evelyn felt a pang of guilt for even asking, knowing how overwhelmed Jennifer already was. "I understand, Jen. Thanks anyway," she said, though Jennifer had technically offered to help. Evelyn stood over the kitchen sink, her hands submerged in sudsy water, mechanically moving back and forth as she scrubbed the dinner plates. The warm water was supposed to be soothing, a brief respite in her chaotic evening, but her mind was elsewhere, tangled in the unending problem of finding a babysitter for Charlotte. The plate in her hands was a plain white ceramic, nothing special, but as her thoughts spiraled, her grip loosened. It slipped, the sound of ceramic striking stainless steel echoing sharply in the quiet kitchen. She winced, watching as it cracked upon impact. Sighing, Evelyn set aside the sponge and began to pick up the pieces. Each shard seemed to mock her, a tangible reminder of her fraying composure. As she dropped the last of the broken pieces into the trash, Evelyn's phone buzzed from the dining table. She wiped her hands on her apron and checked the screen. A message of yet another, "Sorry, I can't." Her heart sank. It felt like every path she took led to another dead end. Frustration welled up inside her, and without thinking, she grabbed another plate and hurled it into the sink. The shattering sound was louder this time, more satisfying and yet more heartbreaking. The plate broke into countless pieces, mirroring the splintering pressure inside her. Leaning back against the cool kitchen wall, Evelyn slid down until she was sitting on the cold floor. Her head rested back, eyes closed as tears began to silently trail down her cheeks. After a few minutes, the sound of small feet pattering on the floor reached her ears. Evelyn quickly wiped her eyes and looked up to see Charlotte standing in the doorway with a worried frown. "Mummy, why are you sad?" Charlotte's voice was tinged with concern. Evelyn forced a smile and opened her arms. "It's okay, sweetheart. Mummy just had a little accident with the dishes." Charlotte hurried over and climbed into her lap, wrapping her small arms around her mother. "You can help me pick up the toys later, okay?" Evelyn suggested, trying to redirect her daughter's attention and maybe, just maybe, feel a bit more in control of the small things. "Okay, Mummy, I'll help," Charlotte said, nodding seriously. As they hugged, Evelyn felt a small, comforting warmth spread through her. Evelyn had grown up in a small town where everyone knew each other's business. Her family was the kind that attended church every Sunday without fail and held firm to traditional values. When Evelyn left for college, it was a bittersweet moment for her parents. They were proud yet worried about the big city influences she might encounter. At college, Evelyn quickly adapted to the vibrant campus life. It was during a volunteer event that she met Michael, a charming fellow student with a quick smile and a quicker wit. Michael was everything Evelyn had never encountered back home. Adventurous, carefree, and spontaneously fun. They started dating and everything felt like a whirlwind romance. Months flew by filled with laughter, late-night talks, and plans for a future together. However, the unexpected happened. Evelyn found out she was pregnant. When she told Michael, expecting support and maybe even excitement, his reaction was cold. After a week of tense conversations and sleepless nights, Michael packed his bags and left, with little more than a goodbye. Evelyn was devastated. For a moment, she thought about confiding in her parents, but the image of disappointment on their faces, the shake of her father's head, and the sorrow in her mother's eyes stopped her. She couldn't bear to bring them distress, not when they had worked so hard to give her a life different from their own, constrained by fewer opportunities. Back in her room, her phone buzzed relentlessly with messages from her closest friends. They had been supportive when she first shared her fears about being pregnant, but their advice now felt like a cacophony of conflicting opinions. "It's your body, your choice," some said, encouraging her to consider an abortion. Others reminded her of her career, her dreams, and the life of independence she had always envisioned. Evelyn sat on the edge of her bed, her hands trembling as she held the tiny ultrasound picture. A tear slipped down her cheek, not out of fear, but out of a sudden, overwhelming love. She had always wanted to be a doctor, to save lives, and now, ironically, she was contemplating ending one before it even had a chance to begin. "No," she whispered to herself, wiping her tears away. "I can't do it. I won't." Evelyn's final months at college were a blur of harsh whispers and judgmental glances. The once welcoming campus paths now felt like gauntlets, with every step scrutinized by curious or condemning eyes. Rumors about her swirled like autumn leaves. Some said she was involved in scandalous affairs, others whispered she'd tricked someone wealthy, none of which held a shred of truth. It was a painful irony that the place she had come to seek knowledge had taught her more about cruelty than compassion. After giving birth to Charlotte, a beautiful baby girl with bright eyes and a quiet demeanour, Evelyn's challenges multiplied. She tried to juggle her studies and motherhood, but with each passing day, her academic performance slipped. The sleepless nights, endless diaper changes, and the sheer emotional toll of parenting alone were overwhelming. "I just can't do it anymore," Evelyn confessed to herself one sleepless night as Charlotte finally drifted off to sleep. Her grades had plummeted, and her scholarships were in jeopardy. Reluctantly, she filled out the paperwork to withdraw from the university, her dreams of becoming a doctor slipping through her fingers like the pages of an unopened textbook. Living a double life, hiding her new reality from her parents, added to her stress. Every phone call home was a tightrope walk of vague answers and quick changes of subject. She was drowning in her secrets, isolated by her fears. One particularly tough day, after a call with her mother, who sensed something was wrong but couldn't pry the truth out, Evelyn reached her breaking point. The walls of her small apartment seemed to close in, echoing back the harsh words and rumours she'd heard whispered behind her back on campus. Packing a few essentials, Evelyn strapped Charlotte into her car seat, got into her old Volkswagen, and drove away without looking back. She drove through the night, guided by the dim headlights and a desperate need for escape. As dawn broke, the car sputtered to a stop in front of a small diner in a town she didn't recognise. The sign welcoming visitors to Pinehaven was quaint, painted with cheerful colours that seemed to promise a gentler life. Evelyn took Charlotte in her arms and walked into the diner. The warm smell of coffee and the sound of soft music felt like a balm. She settled into a booth, and Charlotte cooed, reaching for the sunlight dancing through the window. "First time in Pinehaven?" the waitress asked with a smile, placing a menu in front of Evelyn. "Yes, just arrived," Evelyn replied, returning the smile. "Well, you picked a good place to land. People here look out for each other." "What brings you to town?" the waitress inquired, her tone friendly. "Just looking for a quiet place," Evelyn said, her voice hopeful. The first few nights after Evelyn left her old life behind, she and little Charlotte slept in the cramped back seat of her Volkswagen. The car, filled with their most essential belongings, was parked in various spots around Pinehaven, each chosen for a night's safety under street lamps or in the quieter corners of public parking lots. Evelyn tried to keep a brave face for Charlotte, singing softly to her at night. But as each day passed, the weight of her situation grew heavier. She needed a job, not just for money, but to build a stable life for her daughter. Each morning, Evelyn drove around town, stopping at every shop, diner, and office she could find, hoping someone would give her a chance. Her routine became a cycle of hopeful inquiries, followed by polite or sometimes blunt rejections. One day she walked into a small bakery, the smell of fresh bread giving her a momentary sense of comfort. The owner, a middle-aged woman with flour dusted on her apron, was kneading dough behind the counter. "Excuse me?" Evelyn approached hesitantly. "Are you hiring?" The woman looked up, wiping her hands on her apron. "We might be. Do you have experience?" "Not in bakeries, but I'm a quick learner and I'm really dependable," Evelyn replied, her voice laced with earnestness. The woman nodded, considering. "Do you have any responsibilities? I need someone who can be flexible with hours." Evelyn hesitated, knowing this was the moment that had turned all her previous opportunities sour. "I have a baby, a little girl, but I can work any hours you have, as long as I know in advance to arrange care for her." The baker's expression changed subtly, a mix of sympathy and hesitation crossing her features. "I see. I'm sorry, dear, but I need someone with more flexibility. Babies are unpredictable. Best of luck to you." Evelyn thanked her and left, trying to hold back tears. This was not the first or even the fifth time her being a mother had closed a door in her face. She felt the sting of rejection anew each time, and it never got easier. As Evelyn returned to her car, Charlotte began to cry, her small face scrunching up in discomfort or maybe just reflecting her mother's sadness. "It's okay, baby. We'll figure this out," she whispered, although she was starting to doubt her own reassurances. That night, as Evelyn lay awake in the car, she heard a knock on the window. Startled, she sat up to see a police officer shining a flashlight into the car. Heart pounding, she rolled down the window. "Mom, you can't sleep here. It's not safe. Are you okay?" the officer asked, his tone a mix of concern and official duty. Evelyn felt a mix of embarrassment and fear. We stopped for a little break. We're going to leave soon, officer," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The officer softened. "All right, well, you can't sleep here." Evelyn drove away and soon had to pull over again because Charlotte started to cry and wouldn't stop. She tried to calm the baby, but her cries only grew louder. Exhaustion was etched deep into Evelyn's face as she struggled to soothe her daughter. Just as she felt her resolve waning, a voice startled her. "Oh, poor baby, let me take her," said an elderly woman, appearing seemingly out of nowhere. Her hands gently took Charlotte from Evelyn's arms before she could react. Stunned, Evelyn watched as the woman expertly rocked Charlotte, humming a soft lullaby. The suddenness of it all left Evelyn speechless, her anxiety spiking as the stranger began to walk away with her child. "Excuse me, where are you going?" Evelyn's voice cracked as she followed them, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and confusion. The woman turned around, still humming and rocking Charlotte, who began to quiet down under her touch. "When did you eat last time?" she asked Evelyn, her tone kind yet concerned. "I don't remember," Evelyn admitted, her voice low, the realization of her own neglect hitting her. The woman paused, looking Evelyn over with a sharp, assessing gaze. "You're running low, dear. Your baby is hungry because you are too. You're both skinny and need proper nourishment." Evelyn felt a rush of embarrassment mixed with relief. The woman's straightforward manner was disarming and strangely comforting. "Come with me," the elderly woman finally introduced herself as Maggie White. "Let's get you both something to eat. I live just around the corner." Hesitant but desperate, Evelyn followed Maggie to a small, neatly kept house, tucked away behind a row of towering oaks. Inside, the home was warm and inviting, filled with the smell of baking bread and something sweet simmering on the stove. Maggie set Charlotte down in a homemade cradle in the living room. "Sit down, dear. I'll fix you some soup and bread. It's not much, but it'll help," she said, Moving towards the kitchen with an ease that spoke of years spent caring for others, Evelyn sat, watching Maggie, her mind a whirlwind of thoughts. How could this stranger be so kind without knowing anything about her? As Maggie returned with a tray of food, she sat down opposite Evelyn. "Eat up. You need your strength," she urged. "Why are you helping me?" Evelyn asked, her voice thick with unshed tears. Maggie smiled, a soft, knowing expression. "Many years ago, I was in a tough spot too. Someone helped me, just like this. It's my turn to pass on the kindness." Evelyn ate, feeling the warmth of the food seep into her bones. Charlotte, now calm and fed, slept peacefully. The simple act of eating a warm meal felt like a balm to her weary spirit. "Thank you, Maggie. I don't know what to say," Evelyn said, her voice soft with gratitude. "No need to say anything. Just take care of that little girl, and when you're able, maybe you'll help someone else in need," Maggie replied, her eyes twinkling. In the months that followed, Evelyn's life began to reshape itself in the warmth of Mrs. Maggie White's home. Maggie had opened her doors and heart to Evelyn and Charlotte, providing not just a roof over their heads, but a stable, loving environment. It was a stark contrast to the uncertainty of their recent past. "Maggie, I can't thank you enough for all you've done for us," Evelyn said one morning as they shared a quiet breakfast. The early light poured through the kitchen window, casting a serene glow over the simple scene. "Nonsense, dear," Maggie waved her off with a smile. "We're family now. And besides, it's a joy having a little one around again. Keeps an old lady on her toes." Evelyn chuckled, watching Charlotte play on the floor with her blocks. Seeing her so content, so secure, filled Evelyn with a mix of gratitude and resolve. She knew she couldn't rely on Maggie's generosity forever. She needed to stand on her own 2 feet for her daughter's sake and her own. With Maggie's help, Evelyn started looking for work. It wasn't easy, but Maggie's encouragement kept her going. Eventually, Evelyn found a job at a local grocery store. It was nothing fancy, but it was a start, a chance to rebuild her independence. "You're doing great, Evelyn. Just keep at it," Maggie encouraged her one evening after Evelyn came home, tired but satisfied from a day's work. Evelyn managed to balance her job and caring for Charlotte, with Maggie stepping in to babysit when she could. Life had developed a new routine, a new normal. Charlotte thrived under the attention of both her mother and Maggie, growing into a lively and curious toddler. As the months turned into a year, Evelyn's financial situation stabilized. She was eating better, feeling stronger, and saving money. Yet, with every passing day, the comfort of Maggie's home also brought a growing discomfort. Evelyn felt an increasing need to regain her full independence. Finally, she made a decision. After discussing it with Maggie, Evelyn rented a small trailer just a few blocks away. It was modest but would be her own space, a place she could make a home for Charlotte without feeling like a burden. The day she moved, Maggie helped her pack, both of them trying to be cheerful despite the undercurrent of sadness at their impending separation. "You know, you're always welcome here, Evelyn. Don't you forget that," Maggie said as she handed Evelyn a box of Charlotte's toys. "I won't, Maggie, and we'll visit, won't we, Charlotte?" Evelyn replied, looking down at her daughter, who nodded enthusiastically. Settling into the trailer was a bittersweet experience. It was cramped and needed some fixing up, but it was hers. Evelyn put up pictures, made curtains, and slowly turned the space into a home. She continued working at the grocery store, sometimes picking up extra shifts to cover the new expenses. Maggie remained a constant in their lives, visiting often to babysit Charlotte or just to share a cup of tea. When Charlotte turned 4, Evelyn reignited her long-held aspiration to become a doctor and took a significant step toward that goal. She secured a position as an orderly at the local hospital. This role not only allowed her to immerse herself in the medical environment, but also to learn directly from healthcare professionals. Evelyn felt a sense of purpose as she walked through the halls of Pine Haven Hospital. Working as an orderly wasn't her dream job, but it was a step closer to the world of medicine she had once longed to be a part of. Charlotte was starting to understand her mother's commitments. "Mummy helps people at the hospital," she would say proudly to anyone who listened. However, the job brought with it a new set of logistical challenges. Unlike her previous jobs, the hospital environment was too strict and risky for children, and Charlotte couldn't come along. As always, Mrs. Maggie White had been Evelyn's steadfast supporter, stepping in to watch Charlotte whenever Evelyn's shifts ran long. But then came that rainy, overcast evening when Maggie said she couldn't take Charlotte in because she was leaving. With a deep breath, Evelyn picked up her phone again, but this time she wasn't calling anyone else. She opened her notepad app and started jotting down a quick list of what she'd need to bring with her to make the night manageable for both her and Charlotte at her workplace. If no one could help, then she'd have to bring her daughter along to her shift. "All right, Charlotte," Evelyn finally said, turning to her daughter with a forced smile. "How about a little adventure tonight? We're going to work with Mummy." Charlotte's eyes lit up. "Are there snacks?" she asked, her simple question piercing through the heaviness in Evelyn's heart. "Yes, Bug. Lots of snacks," Evelyn assured her, her decision solidifying. She might not have had the village she hoped to rely on, but she had determination and the love for her daughter that would make up for it. Together, they packed a small bag, snacks, a few toys, Charlotte's favourite blanket, and her tablet filled with games and movies. As they stepped out into the evening, Evelyn felt a mix of dread and resolve. It was going to be a long night, one that was actually going to change her life. Evelyn knelt down to Charlotte's level, her expression gentle, but serious. "Charlotte, darling, it's really important that you stay very quiet and out of the way while we're there, okay? If not, I might lose my job." Charlotte's eyes sparkled with excitement, her small hands clasped together eagerly. "Mum, I promise I'll be super quiet, and will I get to see how you heal people?" Evelyn smiled warmly and pulled her daughter into a soft embrace. Ever since Charlotte had been old enough to understand, she had been fascinated with medicine. All her toys were medical themed, and even at the tender age of 5, she declared her intention to become a doctor. She wanted to save lives, just like her mom had always dreamed of doing. "You'll see some of that, sweetheart, but we have to remember that the patients are very sick and need quiet to rest and recover," Evelyn explained, stroking Charlotte's hair gently. Charlotte nodded earnestly, her face serious. "Mum, can I bring my little medical kit?" "Of course you can bring it," Evelyn agreed, her heart swelling with pride at her daughter's enthusiasm. It might make you feel even more like a real doctor. Upon their arrival at the hospital, Evelyn quickly settled Charlotte at the nurse's station, handing her a stack of paper and a pencil. "Here, you can draw or write while I work. I'll come and get you once it's a bit quieter," Evelyn instructed with a reassuring smile. Evelyn was well respected at the hospital for her helpfulness, friendliness, and professionalism. She always stayed out of gossip and conflicts, which perhaps contributed to the warm treatment she received from her colleagues. As the door creaked open, a familiar voice greeted them. "Oh, looks like we have a little visitor today," exclaimed Chloe, one of the nurses, upon noticing Charlotte. Charlotte glanced at her mother, seeking approval, and then returned a shy smile. "It's an emergency, Chloe. Our regular babysitter, Mrs. White, couldn't help us out today, so Charlotte is joining me. She'll be quiet and well-behaved," Evelyn reassured her. Chloe waved a hand dismissively, smiling warmly. "Oh, don't worry about it. Go on with your tasks. We'll have a little party here with hot chocolate and pastries. Won't we, Charlotte?" As Evelyn slipped away to change into her uniform, Chloe brought her up to speed on the day's events. "Anything I need to know about immediately?" Evelyn asked while pulling on her scrubs. "We have 2 new patients today, both ambulatory. Your critical patient is stable, but call if you need extra hands," Chloe responded, organising some paperwork. Evelyn chuckled, tying her hair back. "Come on, Chloe, you know I've handled tougher days. I'll manage." Chloe nodded, her expression turning a bit more serious. "Has there been any change with him?" "No changes yet," Chloe replied. "It's still uncertain how long he'll remain in this state or what condition he'll be in when he wakes up." Charlotte listened intently, absorbing every detail. As Evelyn departed, Charlotte turned to Chloe with a concerned look. "Tell me about the sick man. Why did you say Mum might need your help? Is he going to hurt Mum?" she asked, her voice tinged with worry. Chloe raised her eyebrows in surprise, then chuckled softly. "Oh no, sweetheart. He won't hurt anyone. He's in a coma." Seeing Charlotte's puzzled expression, Chloe knelt down beside her to explain more clearly. A coma is like a very deep sleep. It's so deep that even though we want to, we can't wake him up. "Not even doctors can wake him up?" Charlotte asked, her eyes wide. "Not even doctors," Chloe confirmed gently. "And Mum needs to change his sheets, but he can't help her because he can't move, so she needs help to carefully turn him over," Chloe added. Charlotte nodded, her expression serious. "Are they treating him?" "Yes, they are, honey," Chloe reassured her as she set up a small table for their snack. Chloe continued. "The man your mum is taking care of was in a car accident. His wounds have healed, but he just can't wake up." Charlotte processed this new information. The man was asleep, and that's why her mom was having a hard time with him. If he were awake, her mom wouldn't be so exhausted. Charlotte thought the solution seemed simple. He needed to be woken up. It puzzled her that the doctors hadn't managed to do that yet. After finishing her snack, Charlotte began to draw, casting occasional glances at her little medical kit. She was convinced it would prove useful. She firmly believed that while doctors didn't know everything, she would be different. When she grew up, she planned to master it all. Soon, Hazel appeared at the door of the nurses' station. "Chloe, we need to hurry. They've brought in someone in serious condition," she announced urgently. Chloe gave Charlotte a gentle pat on the head. "All right, sweetheart. Keep having fun with your drawings. Your mum will be back to check on you soon." "Okay, I'll keep drawing," Charlotte replied with a nod. As Chloe and Hazel hurried off, Charlotte's mind wandered to her mum's exhausting job and the man who wouldn't wake up. She loved her mum deeply and felt a compelling need to help. With a determined whisper to herself, she picked up her toy medical kit and stealthily left the room, intent on finding the man's ward. While she had visited the hospital a few times, the myriad of rooms still posed a challenge. As she tiptoed along the corridor, she heard footsteps approaching and quickly ducked behind a door. 2 doctors stopped nearby to converse. "What's the situation?" asked one doctor. "Everything is stable for now. His heart and vital functions are all normal, but the brain isn't responding," the other replied. "How long has he been here?" "Since March 10th, and it's still uncertain what the outcome will be. His mother visits daily and offers a lot of money for his care. But honestly, what good does money do in situations like these? It just shows that money can't buy everything." As the voices of the doctors faded into the distance, Charlotte's face lit up with a wide smile. She was thrilled at the thought of everyone being amazed by her. After all, no one else had managed to cure this man. Fueled by determination, she dashed down the corridor toward the room the doctors had mentioned. Reaching the end of the hallway, she spotted the correct room number on a door. She paused, listening intently to ensure the coast was clear, then quickly slipped into the room, gently closing the door behind her. "Hi, mister," she greeted the quiet room. Only the hum of machines responded. The room was simply furnished with a single bed, a television mounted on the wall, and a vase of flowers that brightened the space somewhat. Charlotte looked around doubtfully for a moment. Could such a plain room really be the place? The consistent beeping of the monitors next to the bed reassured her that she was indeed in the right spot. She confidently set out her plastic medical tools and started her examination. "Breathe in, breathe out," she instructed the unresponsive patient, mimicking what she had seen doctors do. As Charlotte continued her earnest efforts, Evelyn was wrapping up her tasks. After finishing mopping the floors, her next job was to check the bedding in several rooms. But first, she wanted to check on Charlotte. She planned to make a cozy sleeping spot for her in an hour. As she headed toward the nurse's station, Chloe caught her attention. "Evelyn, could you prepare the bed in room 10? We're about to admit a new patient," Chloe said. "I'll just check on Charlotte first," Evelyn replied, concerned about her daughter. "I just came from there," Chloe assured her. "She's just had a snack and settled down to draw. The kid's perfectly happy." Evelyn nodded, relieved. "Oh, okay then. I'll check on her later." After making the bed in room 10 and ensuring everything was ready for the new patient, Evelyn felt a pull of concern. Deciding it was time to see how Charlotte was really doing, she headed towards the room where she had left her. Evelyn finished making the bed in room 10, and, as she arranged the last pillow, her thoughts turned to the comatose patient in the other room. Life indeed had its unpredictable twists. The patient was only about 30 years old, a young man with his whole life ahead of him, described by colleagues as both handsome and successful. Yet now he lay motionless, his future hanging by a thread. From what Evelyn had heard, the patient had suffered from a terrible accident just days before his wedding was supposed to take place. Since his admission, the only visitor she had noticed was his mother. It seemed no one else came to see him. The patient's mother, driven by her deep concern and helplessness, frequently visited the hospital. She had taken to giving gifts and even money to the staff, hoping they would pay extra attention to her son, ensuring his cleanliness and comfort. It was an unusual situation. Evelyn had never seen anything quite like it before. She herself couldn't bring herself to accept any gifts. She was already compensated for her work and believed in providing the best care possible, regardless of any extra incentives. Evelyn stepped into the corridor, immediately sensing a flurry of activity. Doctors and nurses, including Chloe and Hazel, were rushing toward room 6. "What's going on?" Evelyn asked, catching up with them. Chloe responded without slowing her pace. "Not sure yet. There's trouble with the machines. They're going off. It's the comatose patient." Unknown to them, Charlotte was in that very room. She watched with amazement as the man in the bed scrunch up his nose and then sneeze. The room's monitors beeped urgently and lights flashed as he opened his eyes and looked straight at her, the little girl holding a feather she had plucked from a pillow. "Who are you?" he whispered hoarsely. "I'm Charlotte. I came to wake you up," she replied confidently. He looked around bewilderedly. "Where am I?" he murmured. Charlotte giggled. "You're in the hospital. You've been sleeping a really long time and everyone's been trying to wake you up." She proceeded to tell him what she had overheard from the doctors in the corridor. "The doctors said you were in a car accident," she informed him with a serious nod. "Really? Oh my goodness." The man attempted to sit up, but Charlotte raised her finger authoritatively. "You must lie down. You're sick. The doctor will tell you when you can get up." The patient smiled weakly. "I thought you were my doctor." Before Charlotte could reply, the door swung open and the room quickly filled with medical personnel. Charlotte retreated in fear. Within moments, Evelyn had scooped her up in her arms. "Oh my goodness, Charlotte! What are you doing here?" Evelyn exclaimed, her voice filled with panic and relief. Then, in a low whisper, she added, "You might get me fired now." Evelyn hugged Charlotte tightly and moved to stand silently in the corner of the room, her heart racing with anxiety and awe. The medical team was bustling around the patient, bombarding him with questions. What woke you up? Was it a sound? A sensation? What did you feel exactly? One of the doctors asked. A tickle, the patient responded, his voice still weak but clear. A tickle? The doctor repeated, his eyebrows arching in surprise. Yes, a little doctor tickled me with a feather. I sneezed and then I woke up, the patient explained, a faint smile on his lips. Instantly, all eyes turned towards Evelyn and Charlotte. Sensing the scrutiny, the patient quickly came to Charlotte's defense. Please don't look at her like that. She's done nothing wrong. The doctor, still puzzled, nodded. Oh no, of course she's done nothing wrong. We're all just surprised and trying to understand how this is even possible, he assured, his tone mixed with curiosity and amazement. The room filled with a mix of tension and wonder as everyone tried to process the unexpected turn of events. Charlotte, exhausted from the day's ordeals, finally succumbed to sleep. Evelyn, alongside her fellow nurses, sipped her coffee at the nurses' station. Their casual chatter was abruptly interrupted when Dr. Simmons, the head doctor, appeared at the door. His expression was unreadable, but his presence demanded immediate attention. Evelyn, could you come with me to my office? He asked, his voice firm yet devoid of emotion. Evelyn nodded, her stomach churning with anxiety. She followed Dr. Simmons, her footsteps echoing slightly in the quiet hallway. As they entered his office, the door closed with a soft click behind them. Please take a seat, Dr. Simmons gestured to the chair across his desk. Evelyn sat, her hands folded in her lap, trying to steady her nerves. Dr. Simmons began by asking about her recent shifts, his questions straightforward. However, his tone shifted as he broached the subject that truly concerned him. Evelyn, I need to understand why Charlotte was brought here to the hospital. This is highly irregular and against our policies. Evelyn took a deep breath, her voice a whisper of desperation. Sir, I had no choice. The person I used to rely on left for another town, and I couldn't leave Charlotte alone. I'm so sorry, sir. Dr. Simmons listened, his face an impassive mask. After a moment he spoke, his voice calm yet stern. I understand your predicament, but bringing her here could jeopardize the safety and comfort of our patients. It also risks our reputation. Evelyn's eyes welled up with tears. I'm terribly sorry, Dr. Simmons. It was a mistake, and I assure you, it won't happen again. He nodded, acknowledging her apology, but his next words fell like a hammer. I'm afraid I have to let you go, Evelyn. We can't set precedents where personal matters interfere with hospital operations. Stunned, Evelyn stood up, her heart sinking. She walked out of the office, her mind reeling from what had just transpired. Back at the nurses' station, Chloe noticed Evelyn's distraught expression immediately. Evelyn, what's wrong? Evelyn shook her head, the words catching in her throat. I've been fired, Chloe. Dr. Simmons let me go because of Charlotte. Chloe's eyes widened in disbelief. Without a word, she marched to Dr. Simmons' office. Bursting in, she found him at his desk. Chloe spoke with clear frustration. Dr. Simmons, Charlotte was as quiet as a mouse. She didn't disturb anyone. In fact, she even woke up the comatose patient. Weren't you there to see it yourself? Dr. Simmons looked up, his expression hardening. Chloe, that you even knew and didn't report it is troubling. If you challenge this decision or discuss it further, you may find yourself in a similar position. Chloe exited the office, her thoughts swirling. She returned to the nurses' station, finding Evelyn collecting her belongings. We'll figure this out, Evelyn. This isn't over, Chloe whispered, her voice a mix of determination and worry. Evelyn sat in her trailer, a place that now felt like both a refuge and a reminder of her recent job loss. Despite the setback, she was overwhelmed with pride for her daughter, Charlotte. To celebrate their unique victory that day, they had bought a cake, sweetening the moment of togetherness. After finishing their dinner, they moved on to dessert. Evelyn started the conversation with her 5-year-old, her voice filled with wonder and affection. "You just blew my mind today, darling. I'm so proud of you, and I love you so much. What you did today was like a miracle." "How did you even think to do that?" Evelyn asked, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. Charlotte looked up at her with a matter-of-fact expression. "Oh, it's easy, Mum. Remember how Mrs. White used to tickle my feet with a feather when I didn't want to wake up for kindergarten?" "Oh, that's right, darling. I do remember now," Evelyn replied, realization dawning on her. The memory triggered laughter between them, filling the trailer with joy. They reminisced about those mornings when Charlotte was a stubborn sleeper, resisting the call to wake up for kindergarten. Their laughter was a balm, turning a challenging day into a cherished memory. As Evelyn wrapped Charlotte in a tight embrace, a deep sense of peace settled over her. Holding her daughter close, she felt a surge of gratitude and reassurance. "You know, Charlotte," Evelyn whispered softly, her voice thick with emotion, "when you're with me, I feel like there's nothing in the world that can truly make me sad." Charlotte looked up at her, a small smile playing on her lips, her eyes shining with innocence and understanding. This simple moment highlighted the profound impact Charlotte had on her life. With her daughter by her side, Evelyn knew she could face anything with a brave heart and a smile. People often underestimated what children could conceive and achieve, but today had proven their incredible potential. Evelyn hugged her tightly and whispered, "I love you so much, sweetheart, and I'm so proud of you. Never stop believing in your ideas, no matter what anyone says." Meanwhile, the corridors of the hospital buzzed with whispers and hurried footsteps as the news of a miraculous recovery swept through the wards. Liam, who had been comatose for weeks, was now sitting up in his bed, his eyes filled with a mix of disbelief and curiosity. In his room, Liam's elderly mother, Jill, clutched her son's hand, tears of joy streaming down her cheeks. "Oh, Liam, I knew you'd come back to us," she sobbed, her voice thick with emotion. Dr. Simmons, a tall man with a commanding presence, stood at the foot of the bed, his face wearing a practiced smile. "We've been doing everything we can, Jill. I assure you, the staff here has been exceptionally attentive to Liam's needs." Liam, however, looked skeptical. His brow furrowed as he scanned the room, ignoring the doctor's reassurances. "But where is she? The little girl who was here. She spoke to me," he insisted, his voice firm despite his weak state. Dr. Simmons exchanged a quick, uneasy glance with a nurse before turning back to Liam with a reassuring smile. "Liam, it's quite common for patients to experience vivid dreams or hallucinations as they emerge from a comatose state. We sometimes use auditory stimuli as part of the treatment, which might have mingled with your dreams." "But she was real," Liam countered, frustration mounting in his voice. "She talked to me, helped me wake up. I need to thank her." Jill looked from her son to Dr. Simmons, confusion etching her features. Dr. Simmons, maintaining his calm demeanour, leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Liam, I want to be very clear. There was no little girl. What you experienced was a part of your recovery. A bridge between your subconscious and the waking world. It's a good sign, but it was not real." Liam's expression hardened, the lines of doubt etching deeper into his face. He turned away from the doctor, his gaze distant and thoughtful. Jill squeezed his hand, trying to offer comfort, but her eyes were filled with questions that mirrored her son's doubts. The atmosphere shifted from relief and joy to tension and suspicion. Suddenly, the door swung open and Chloe, known for her no-nonsense attitude, stepped in. Her expression was grim, her eyes hard with determination. Dr. Simmons, his face a mask of professional calm, turned towards her. "Chloe, this isn't the time. I need you to step outside," he said, his voice low but firm. Chloe didn't move, Instead, she fixed her gaze on Liam, her stance resolute. "I don't know what Dr. Simmons has told you," she began, her voice steady, "but the little girl who woke you up is real. Her mother was unjustly fired by him." Dr. Simmons made a move to interrupt, but Chloe continued, her voice rising slightly. "Her name is Charlotte, and her mother, Evelyn, was a dedicated orderly here." Jill, who had been sitting quietly, her emotions running from elation at her son's recovery to confusion at the unfolding drama, now looked up sharply. "Is this true?" she demanded, her voice carrying a weight of authority that surprised even Dr. Simmons. Dr. Simmons opened his mouth to respond, but Chloe wasn't finished. "Dr. Simmons has been trying to impress your family, thinking it might benefit his career. It's why he dismissed Evelyn so harshly." The revelation struck Liam and Jill like a thunderbolt. Jill turned to Dr. Simmons, her eyes narrowing. "I need to speak to the other doctors," she declared, her tone indicating that this matter was far from settled. As Chloe nodded in approval, Dr. Simmons realized the gravity of the situation. His attempts to control the narrative had unraveled, and now he faced not only the questioning of his medical ethics, but also a potential inquiry into his actions. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the small living room of Evelyn's trailer. It had been 2 quiet weeks since the upheaval at the hospital, and life had settled into a new, if somewhat subdued, rhythm. Evelyn had just started kneading dough for dinner when a knock at the door startled her. "I'm coming," she called out, shaking her hands free of flour, and caught a glimpse of herself in the hallway mirror. Her nose was covered in a dusting of flour, but she shrugged, smiling at her reflection. When she swung open the door, the last person she expected stood before her, Liam, with a warm and slightly shy smile. In his arms he carried a cake, a bouquet of flowers, and a toy doctor set. "Liam!" Charlotte's squeal cut through Evelyn's shock as she zoomed past her mother and threw herself at Liam. "Hello, Dr. Charlotte!" Liam chuckled, balancing his gifts to hug her back. "I've come for my checkup. I hope you won't send me away." "Of course not," Charlotte beamed, already pulling at the box containing the toy set. Evelyn, still a bit flustered, managed to smile. "Please come in." She hurried to the kitchen to brush off the flour and compose herself. When she returned, Liam and Charlotte were already sprawled on the floor, the toy set spread out between them. They were deep in discussion over the names of the various medical instruments. "I've made fresh soup. Let's eat in the kitchen," Evelyn suggested, her voice regaining some of its usual warmth. Charlotte, still chattering excitedly, took Liam's hand. "You have to try Mom's soup, Liam. She cuts the carrots into round shapes and I love fishing them out." At the dinner table, the soup and homemade bread warmed the room with their inviting aroma. Liam praised the meal, and Charlotte monopolized the conversation with an endless stream of questions for Liam, ranging from his favourite colour to why clouds float. The kitchen was filled with the soft glow of the evening light as dinner came to a close. Liam, his eyes crinkling with warmth, turned his attention towards Charlotte, who now sat expectantly with her small hands clasped together on the table. "Charlotte, I actually came here for a very special reason," Liam began, his tone gentle and sincere. "I wanted to thank you personally for waking me up. You did something really amazing." Charlotte beamed, her eyes lighting up. "You're welcome," she chirped proudly. "And if you ever fall asleep again, just let me know so I can wake you up." Her seriousness on the matter made Evelyn laugh, and Liam joined in, the sound of their laughter filling the room. "That's a deal," Liam said with a nod, his laughter subsiding into a soft smile. Then he turned his attention to Evelyn. "Evelyn, what happened wasn't right. I've been talking to some people, trying to help." Evelyn raised her eyebrows, curious but cautious. "Help? How?" "Well, I've discussed your situation with a few colleagues and friends in the healthcare community. They were quite moved by the story, and actually, a couple of clinics have expressed interest in meeting you. They value someone who raises such a thoughtful child and who's clearly dedicated to her profession. Evelyn was taken aback, a mix of hope and disbelief washing over her. Really? That would be wonderful, Liam. Thank you, I didn't expect any of this. It's the least I could do, Liam said, smiling. As they cleared the table together, the weight of past hardships seemed a little lighter, and the path ahead a bit clearer. The kitchen clock ticked softly in the background, marking the late hour. Evelyn and Liam had spent the evening talking long after Charlotte had drifted off to sleep. Liam glanced at the clock and stood abruptly, his chair scraping gently against the tile floor. "Oh, I didn't realise it was so late already. I guess I'll go and let you go to bed," he said, a note of reluctance in his voice. Evelyn smiled, her eyes crinkling at the corners. "It's okay, I'll get enough sleep," she reassured him. Liam walked towards the door, the sound of his steps echoing slightly in the quiet house. He opened it and stepped out into the cool night air, taking a few steps before stopping. He turned back, a look of resolve crossing his face as he seemed to gather his thoughts. "Can I come by again? Or perhaps invite you both out sometime? Please don't think anything of it, but I really like you and Charlotte and your soup," he said, his voice carrying a hint of nervousness. The mention of her soup brought a warm blush to Evelyn's cheeks, and she laughed softly. "Of course, come by any time," she replied, her heart light and hopeful. Liam's face broke into a grateful smile. "Thank you, Evelyn. I'll hold you to that." He hesitated for a moment longer, as if he wanted to say more, but then nodded and turned to walk away, his steps lighter than when he had arrived. The next 5 days stretched on, feeling like the longest in Evelyn's life. She found herself chuckling at her own impatience, half expecting Liam to appear at any moment to brighten her day. It hadn't occurred to her that Liam had his own life, possibly filled with priorities far more significant than visiting her. Catching her reflection in the mirror, she smirked. "Do I have a crush on him?" The idea amused her, and she allowed herself to entertain the thought for a while before shrugging it off with a wistful, "Oh well, life goes on." But, as it turned out, she was mistaken. On a bright Saturday morning, as Evelyn and Charlotte were engrossed in cartoons, a loud horn sounded outside. Startled, they both leapt up and rushed out of the trailer. Pulling up was a bright red car, its rear windows festooned with colourful balloons. Behind the wheel sat a man in a suit, his identity obscured by sunglasses. He stepped out with a grave expression, opened the trunk, and retrieved 2 shopping bags. As the man approached, Evelyn's heart fluttered with recognition, and a smile spread across her face. "Excuse me, did you guys order these beautiful dresses?" he asked, pausing for effect. Charlotte glanced up at her mother with wide eyes. At that moment, the man removed his sunglasses, revealing a beaming smile. "Liam!" Charlotte screamed, her face lighting up as she sprinted toward him. Liam scooped her up in a big hug, twirling her around in a circle. "Go ahead and try these on," he urged them, his eyes sparkling with excitement. "Hurry up. It's a surprise." Evelyn, still in a mild state of shock, managed to ask, "What's all this about, Liam?" "Just a little adventure I planned for us," he replied with a wink. Curiosity piqued and spirits lifted. Evelyn and Charlotte hurried inside to change into their new dresses, their morning suddenly transforming into an unexpected adventure. 15 minutes later, Evelyn and Charlotte emerged from the trailer, hand in hand, looking radiant. Liam stood waiting, his gaze fixed on them in admiration. Evelyn, catching his look, twirled playfully. "How do we look?" she asked, her voice light and teasing. I think I've just met the most beautiful woman in my life, Liam exclaimed, his compliment making Evelyn's cheeks warm with a blush. He guided them by the hand to the car, opening the doors with a flourish, the perfect gentleman. They drove for about half an hour until they reached a sprawling estate in the countryside. "Is this your house, Liam?" Charlotte asked, her eyes wide as she took in the grandeur. "Not really. It's my parents'," Liam corrected, with a soft smile. As they stepped out of the car, the majesty of the house enveloped them. Inside, the walls were adorned with numerous trophies, a testament to Liam's father's passion for wildlife hunting. Though his father was long gone, Liam's mother, Jill, lived there alone. Upon entering, Jill greeted them with a warm, embracing smile. She immediately swept Charlotte into a hug, showering her with kisses and holding her close. "Thank you for bringing back my Liam, sweetheart," Jill whispered to Charlotte. Then, turning to Evelyn with a twinkle in her eye, she said, "And you must be the reason Liam hasn't been sleeping well lately, huh?" Evelyn blushed deeper, her eyes darting to Liam, who shook his head and chuckled at his mother's forthrightness. "There you go, Mom. You just gave away the surprise," Liam joked, the room filling with light-hearted laughter. Jill took Charlotte by the hand, engaging her in gentle conversation as they walked through the grand halls of the house. Meanwhile, Liam led Evelyn into the living room where they both sat down on a plush sofa, the ambiance cosy and inviting. As they settled in, Liam turned to Evelyn, his expression growing serious. "I've never really talked about this, but on the day of my accident, I found out my fiancé was cheating on me with my best friend," he began, his voice steady but filled with the weight of his memories. "I was so angry and hurt that I just drove off recklessly, and that's how I ended up in the hospital." Evelyn listened intently, her heart aching for him. "I'm so sorry, Liam," she murmured, her hand reaching out to gently squeeze his. Liam offered a wry smile. "It's been tough, but when my mum learned it was Charlotte who woke me up, she wanted to know everything about her and her mother." He paused, taking a deep breath. "I've been talking to Chloe too. She told me about your past, about what you've been through." Liam's voice softened, his gaze filled with empathy. "It broke my heart to hear about your struggles." "There's more," Liam said, his eyes twinkling with anticipation. He paused, taking a deep breath. "Okay, here we go," he continued, his voice filled with excitement. "I hope you won't be mad at my mom, but she had an idea. Chloe told me that this was something you've always wanted," Liam explained as he gently guided Evelyn back into the grand hall. They all stood together, the atmosphere thick with suspense, when suddenly the doors swung open. In walked Ben and Monica, Evelyn's parents and Charlotte's grandparents. The moment Evelyn turned and saw them, tears sprang to her eyes. She ran to Monica, and they embraced tightly, their emotions overflowing. Ben, moved by the scene, joined in the hug, his own eyes misty. After a moment, Evelyn stepped back, a tearful smile breaking through her emotions. "I've missed you, Mum, Dad," she managed to say, her voice choked with emotion, before pulling them into another hug. "We've missed you too, sweetheart," Monica replied, her voice warm and soothing. Off to the side, Liam discreetly wiped away tears, visibly moved by the reunion. Meanwhile, Jill gently held Charlotte's hand, pointing toward the heartfelt scene. "That's your grandparents, sweetie," Jill explained softly to Charlotte, who looked on with wide-eyed wonder, slowly processing the significance of the moment. The sounds of laughter and chatter filled the air. The family, reunited at last, gathered around the picnic table. Ben, with a gentle smile, turned to his granddaughter. "You know, I never thought I'd get a chance like this," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "But here you are, and it feels like you've always been a part of us. Charlotte smiled and squeezed his hand, her eyes sparkling with tears. Across from them, Monica and Jill were deep in conversation about a family recipe for apple pie. "You must add a pinch of cinnamon. That's the secret," Monica insisted, laughing as Jill took notes on a napkin. Meanwhile, Liam and Evelyn, still sitting on the bench, looked over at their family, their hands intertwined. In the quiet of the afternoon, Liam turned to Evelyn, his voice soft. "Who would have thought that a series of strange events would lead us here?" Evelyn smiled, her eyes reflecting the flickering lights. Maybe it wasn't so strange after all. Maybe it was just meant to be. They leaned in for their first kiss, the world around them fading into the background. Evelyn began a fresh, happier chapter of her life. A few months later, they got married. During the planning of their first trip as a family, they asked Charlotte where she would like to go. "I want to see Mrs. White," Charlotte replied with a smile. Evelyn's heart warmed at her daughter's words. She too had longed to visit Mrs. White, the kind woman who had helped them through tough times. "That's a wonderful idea," Evelyn said, hugging Charlotte. "Mrs. White has been so good to us. It would be the perfect way to thank her." Before heading to the airport, they made a quick stop at the hospital. Chloe had been a really good friend. Evelyn carried a carefully wrapped package in her arms, her heart full of thanks. At the reception, Evelyn handed the package to a friendly nurse. The drive to the airport was filled with light chatter, mostly from Charlotte, who couldn't stop talking about missing Mrs. White. Upon arriving at their destination, the quaint town where Mrs. White now lived, the family was greeted by the fresh, floral scent of spring. Mrs. White's home was charming, with its sprawling garden lush with blooms. When Mrs. White, who came to see her, her face broke into a surprise. Then she opened her arms, exclaiming, "My dears, welcome." Charlotte clung to Mrs. White, chattering away about school and her new friends. Meanwhile, Evelyn took Mrs. White's hands in hers. "We can't thank you enough for everything," she said earnestly. "You've been such a blessing to us." Mrs. White, with a twinkle in her eye, simply squeezed Evelyn's hands. "My dear, seeing you all so happy is all the thanks I need." They spent the day exploring the garden and catching up over tea and cookies, the laughter and chatter echoing through the air. As the sun set, casting a golden glow over the garden, Evelyn felt a profound sense of peace and happiness. They had come full circle, and this journey had been the perfect start to their new chapter.